Now let's talk about the deadlift before we get into the kettlebell, or before you start working out with the kettlebell or the sandbag. There's a video, it's called something boot camp, fitness boot camp or something like that. And the name of the video is deadlift on a first timer. The guy in the video, large dude wearing camo tank top, and he teaches deadlift on a first timer. It's like a 15-minute video, something to that effect, way more in depth than what I'm going to do here. I advise watching it. It's a good video, just disclaimer, he drops an F-bomb like every 30 seconds. But the quick version of deadlift and thoracic extension is this. Ideally, when I'm standing straight up and down, there is a natural curvature from my tailbone to the base of my skull, natural curvature of my spine. So it kind of dips in, comes back out, rounding out, but then dips back in as it goes down towards the tailbone. That is natural thoracic extension, natural spinal alignment, right? So when I move, I want to try and maintain that as much as possible. So as you can see, there's like basically a little handle created by the stick where my spine naturally curves in. And then where my shoulder blades are, I want to draw my shoulders back and sort of move my shoulder blades, sort of pinching the stick. And if you notice, my head is straight up and down. And then while I conduct the movement, the deadlift movement, squat movement, kettlebell swing, whatever, I'm going to let my hips go first. And as I come down, maintain contact on my buttocks and my head, bringing my shoulders back. And I still have my little handle here at the lower dosis of my back, my lower back. And the entire time, I'm keeping all of that straight. Right? There is, if you notice, like my head, when I do that movement, is not dipping down and looking at the weight, because that's starting to pull the top of my spine out of thoracic extension. I'm not leaning it, craning it back and continuing to look up, because that's starting to pull it out of thoracic extension. The rest of the spine's moving, but the upper neck portion is not. I want to actually discipline myself to move without moving my head, right? And I still do it, still move my head a bit. It's not the end of the world, but it could add to neck pain in the future, right? But at any rate, I want to maintain that thoracic extension all throughout. If you get kicked below the belt, your head comes forward. If you get punched in the face, below the belt comes forward, right? So thoracic extension is extremely important in all things. So ideally, your body's always going to try and correct itself if any part of your spine is out of alignment, right? Because that's your central nervous system and your brain's going to try and protect your central nervous system, and that's the quick science on it. So when I do this deadlift, I want to keep my head and neck aligned with my spine in a straight line the entire time, right? That natural curvature. So when I go to lift this bag, I want to have good thoracic extension. I want to have my feet slightly beyond shoulder width apart, slight outward push pressure with my knees so that they're not bowing in. I don't want my knees bowing in, and I don't want them bowing out. I just want to have really the patellas and quads and everything engaged, and start to engage them before the movement, and that'll sort of help you out, right? You got to engage them. You're not just moving back and forth. You have to engage muscles as you start to use them, engage them, right? So I'm here. I got proper thoracic extension. Mechanical advantage versus disadvantage, and start to break in that piece. So I understand I got my feet slightly more shoulder width apart. I'm going to maintain good thoracic extension, head up, shoulders back, right? We're going to talk about the movement itself of a deadlift or a squat or whatever, right? My hips are actually going to go first. I'm not going to just lean forward because that's going to throw all the weight into the balls of my feet. I want to have a good steady platform across the surface of my foot, right? And as I start to go forward, I'm also going to drop my hips back. And you see, once my hips go back, the weight immediately starts to take over. So I'm going to, as the weight starts to take over, maintain my thoracic extension and allow it to control descent to the ground. Then when I go to lift it back up, I'm going to draw my shoulders back. And as soon as the bag clears my knees, push my hips forward and draw my shoulders back and squeeze and engage my glutes and my core. As soon as the weight starts to take over, that's when I start to allow it to go down. So I want it to clear my knees, right? So hips go back first, maintaining thoracic extension. Lower weight to the ground, knees behind the toes. Come up as soon as the bag clears the knees, push the hips forward, squeeze the glutes, engage the core, shoulders back. I want to try and maintain my shoulders back throughout the majority of the motion. With a barbell, you have to. With a sandbag, it's a little bit different. But with a sandbag, you shouldn't be doing weights that are too crazy. And that's a deadlift.